I've always wanted to tell you this, but I don't want you coming into the house looking so dirty. Patricia said as soon as we were alone, glaring at me. I couldn't find the right words to speak out of fear with my husband and father-in-law gone. Well, just so you know, I won't let a dirty daughter-in-law use her bath. If you don't like it, wash in the kitchen, she said with a devilish grin, gauging my reaction. Of course, I didn't have the courage to talk back. I headed to the kitchen as told and rinsed my body with cold water, feeling utterly miserable. Why is this happening to me? If I had known, I wouldn't have come to visit. A single tear rolled down my cheek, and at that moment, I snapped back to reality with a sudden noise. My name is Grace, and I'm 27 years old. I work as a sales clerk at a department store cosmetic counter. I met my husband Thomas 2 years ago. A close friend invited me to my first mixer where Thomas and I hit it off talking about our shared hobby of traveling, and we exchanged contact information. Soon after, he asked me out for a meal, and as we spent time together, I became increasingly attracted to him. After dating for about a year and a half, we got married last month. When we visited his family home to introduce ourselves as a couple, I felt truly blessed. My in-laws were a kind and generous couple, like someone out of a Norman Rockwell painting. I couldn't be happier that they would become my family. My mother-in-law, Patricia, in particular, seemed to take a special interest in me. When we visited the day before our wedding registration, she greeted me with a warm smile, saying, "Grace, thank you so much for marrying our Thomas. I'm the lucky one who gets to marry someone like him." Well, I'm honored you feel that way. If you ever have any problems with my son, don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you. I won't be shy about it. Then let's exchange contact information right away. I recently learned how to use this app. Thomas, overhearing our conversation, jokingly frowned, saying, "Hey now." I was sure I could get along well with this family. At least that's what I believed at that time. But I hadn't realized the real reason Patricia was being kind to me. The sense of unease began just the other day. Since I work at a department store, my days off are often weekdays rather than weekends. Although I can request weekends off, I work without submitting any requests. That day was a weekday, and my husband was at work, so I was at home alone drinking coffee. Then I received a message from Patricia asking, "Are you working today?" When I replied, "I'm off today," my phone rang almost immediately. Patricia? I was wondering why she suddenly called after we had just been messaging each other, but I didn't think too deeply about it and answered the phone. "Hello?" "Ah, hello, Grace?" Her voice somehow sounded colder than usual. While thinking it might be just my imagination, I asked, "How are you?" She then let out a big sigh. "What were you doing just now?" "Huh? Well, I just finished having breakfast and was drinking coffee." "My, coffee, you say? Well, Thomas is working hard since morning. You're drinking coffee?" Yes. I always do this on my days off." "Don't talk back. Do you even realize you've married into the Taylor family?" I was too overwhelmed to find any words to respond to her. Not knowing how to react, I fell silent and she pressed an unreasonable lecture on me. "From the beginning, your attitude has been wrong. When you first came to greet us, you brought those slightly high-end cupcakes, didn't you?" I'm sorry? I heard that your husband likes cupcakes. Did they not suit your taste?" "It's not about that. By giving us cupcakes, you're treating us like old people." No, I didn't mean to." "You're really rude." Just so you know, I prefer cakes and chocolates. Can you not treat me like an old person? I'm sorry. Next time I'll make sure to bring something that you like. I could hear her muttering something barely audible on the other end of the phone. In the end, she left a message saying, "Don't slack off on housework," and hung up on me. As the sound of the disconnected tone echoed in my ears, I could do nothing but stand there dumbfounded. It was only natural as I had just received such a sudden call. I never thought the true nature of my previously kind mother-in-law would be so terrifying. That night, when my husband came home, I immediately brought up the subject. "Thomas, I got a call from your mother today." As I said that, his face lit up and he opened his mouth, looking genuinely happy. "Oh, I got a message from Mom too. She said she had a great time chatting with you and that it was a really enjoyable time." Huh? A great time chatting? Mom's always been shy around people and doesn't seem to have many friends in the neighborhood. So she said she was happy to be able to talk to you like this, and it made her feel like she had a daughter, and she was so happy. She said that? That was a casual chat today? That's definitely not the case. But there's too much discrepancy between his story and my actual experience. That was not a casual conversation. It was undoubtedly a sarcastic remark towards me. But he looked so happy, so what should I do? In the end, I decided to keep quiet. Maybe I should have told the truth right away. But he has great respect for his father, who supports the family, and his mother, who protects the household as a housewife. Even now, he's happily talking about his mother, and I couldn't bring myself to break the smile of the person I love. Since that day, Patricia's words and actions have escalated. She would tell my husband that she wanted to talk to me and would call me during my days off. Phone calls were still manageable, but recently, she started visiting unannounced. She would barge into her home and start inspecting the rooms. If she found even a speck of dust or a single hair, she would start yelling at me right away. "Look, there's hair on the floor again." This is black hair, so I don't think it's... So what? Are you saying it's mine? No, I didn't mean that. You really never know when to shut up. I wonder what Thomas saw in a woman like you. She would sigh deeply and give me a cold look. No matter what I did, it seemed like she would get angry. I couldn't do anything when she was around. "Hurry up and serve me some coffee. Normally, you should have food prepared and ready to serve. You're such a failure as a wife. I was a fool to approve of this marriage." As she said these words so casually, I started to feel like there was something wrong with me. Was it some kind of brainwashing? The more time I spent with her, the lower my self-esteem became. One day during a long holiday, I happened to have 3 days off. My husband and I were discussing going somewhere when his phone rang. "Hello? Mom?" I had a bad feeling about it, but I kept quiet and waited for the call to end. A few minutes later, he finished the call and said with a smile, "Grace, Mom invited us over to her place." "What? She did?" "Yeah, she said she wants to have dinner with us. She's gonna cook a lot of delicious food and she wants us to stay for a night." "I see, but What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Should I tell Mom we can't make it?" His kindness felt more poignant than ever. If I refused now, my relationship with Patricia would only get worse. I forced myself to accept the invitation and we headed to my in-laws' home. When we arrived, Patricia greeted us with a beaming smile. "Welcome, Grace. Come on in." "Thank you. Thank you for having us over. I've been looking forward to having you two here." My husband is out with his friends and will be back tomorrow. I see. She was as gentle as the first time we met. In front of my husband and father-in-law, she would never show her scary side. This was our first visit since getting married, but my husband was with me. If I could endure just one day, we could enjoy the rest of the holiday together. Or so I thought. But right after that, she said something shocking. By the way, Thomas, I just met Jaden. When I told him you were coming back, he said he wanted to have a drink with you. Really? Jaden? Seriously? Yeah, why don't you give him a call? It's been so long since we last met. I'll give him a call. Jaden was probably one of Thomas's friends. He smiled happily and started calling Jaden. Jaden? It's me. Right now? Really? Everyone's coming? Yeah, I'll be there. I'll get ready and head over. His eyes sparkled as he ended the call. He seemed to be in a rare good mood. As expected, he happily brought up the topic. Grace, I'm sorry, but my friends and I decided to have a drink together. Is that okay? Of course. You've been away for a while. There must be a lot to catch up on. I'm sorry for leaving you after you came with me. But opportunities like this are rare, and it's been like 5 years since I saw Jaden. Well, I'm off. Okay. Have fun. He waved goodbye with a big smile and left. As soon as I heard the door close, the tense atmosphere set in. What should I do? I'm alone with Patricia. This wasn't supposed to happen. My heart pounded as I silently looked down. Then she spoke to me. Hey. Yes? I timidly replied, and she lazily opened her mouth. I've always wanted to tell you this, but I don't want you coming into the house looking so dirty. Patricia said as soon as we were alone, glaring at me. I couldn't find the right words to speak, out of fear, with my husband and father-in-law gone. Well... Just so you know, I won't let a dirty daughter-in-law use her bath. If you don't like it, wash in the kitchen, she said with a devilish grin, gauging my reaction. Of course I didn't have the courage to talk back. What do you mean, wash in the kitchen? Oh? Didn't you understand what I just said now? But using the kitchen is really... Shut up! Stop talking back and just wash the dirty body of yours. You better finish before I get out of the bath. Understood? She snorted and confidently headed to the bathroom. If I didn't do as she said, I'd be treated unfairly again. I followed her order and went to the kitchen, rinsing my body with cold water. The season was autumn. I continued to wipe my body with a wet towel in the chilly air. Desperately holding back my tears, my limit was gradually approaching. Why did this have to happen? I was filled with a sense of misery. At that moment, along with my sadness, anger welled up all at once. Why is this happening to me? If I had known, I wouldn't have come to visit. As a single tear ran down my cheek, I heard the door suddenly open and a voice say, "I'm home." It was not my husband who had just left, but my father-in-law, Sean, who had returned. Hearing his footsteps, I quickly put on my clothes. However, while putting on my sweater, he appeared in the kitchen. What? Grace? Why are you here? Sean? Weren't you coming back tomorrow? I finished early, so I took a taxi home. But your clothes... Sorry. I'll get dressed right away. No, it's my fault. I thought you were my wife. She's in the bath right now. I'm sorry you had to see me like this. I quickly got dressed, grabbed the wet towel I had been using to wipe my body, and headed for the living room. And then, seeing my situation, he asked me with a puzzled look as if he sensed something. Grace, what did you use that towel for? I was wiping my body with it. Oh, I said more than I should have and quickly covered my mouth with my hand. But he didn't miss that moment. With a serious expression, different from his usual gentle demeanor, he gazed at me. Why were you washing your body in the kitchen? You could have just taken a bath, right? Well, that's because, Don't tell me. Did my wife say something to you? He muttered, I knew it, and held his head. Seeming to have an idea of what had happened, he began to speak apologetically. Actually, I once accidentally overheard a phone call of my wife's. I didn't know who she was talking to, but she was ranting about not slacking off on housework. That call? She must have been talking to you. I thought she was just warning Thomas. That's what anyone would normally think. I felt something was off because her tone was different than usual. But when I asked her about it, she dodged the question. I never imagined this was happening. I'm truly sorry. He said his apologies and looked down. Then Patricia, who had just gotten out of the bath, came asking, What are you doing? Honey? What happened? Did Grace do something to you? As she tried to console him, he glared sharply at her and yelled, Don't screw with me. This is all you, isn't it? What? Me? That's right. It's because you treated Grace terribly that this has happened, right? What are you talking about? I didn't do anything terrible. Then why was she wiping her body in the kitchen? She did it on her own. Believing that talking further wouldn't resolve anything, he called my husband on the phone. After hearing the situation, my husband rushed back and ran to me, asking, Are you okay? Dad told me. Making you use the kitchen as a substitute for the bath? You didn't have to listen to such an order. But I was scared of what would happen if I refused. So you were that scared of my mom. I'm sorry I didn't notice anything until now. I thought you two were getting along well. Just then, my mother-in-law ran up to my husband, desperately clinging to him and insisting, That's not true! It's all Grace's lies! I didn't do anything! I couldn't help but feel disgusted at her for only thinking of her own self-preservation and not admitting her wrongdoing. I took out my smartphone and showed everyone the numerous messages she had sent me. They included things like, Useless whining wife, you don't deserve my son, I'll make you divorce if you defy me, and so on. There were even some that could be taken as threats. Seeing this, she began to tremble, and Sean also turned bright red and trembled. But the one who showed the most anger was none other than my husband. He grabbed her by collar and pulled her face close to his, ignoring her gasp. He raised his voice to an incredible extent. How dare you! I can't believe you could do such terrible things! She's my wife! I trusted you, but you betray not only me, but also Dad! Do you understand that? Thomas, wait, please. Let's talk first. There's no point in listening to your talk. I'm sorry, but I have no intention of ever being involved with you again. I don't know what Dad will do, but I can't take it anymore. I can't consider someone like you family. Don't ever interfere with our married life again. Goodbye. No! Wait! Please wait, Thomas! No! Her scream echoed through the room, but not a single person had any sympathy for her. Later, my husband told me that his parents got divorced. Sean must not have been able to forgive what happened this time either. He immediately demanded a divorce, gave her half of their savings as a property division, and kicked her out of the house. After getting kicked out, Patricia was carrying the cash in her bag, and it seems she was pickpocketed and almost all the money was stolen. She's now desperately searching for the culprit. It's a fitting retribution for her. As for me, thanks to my husband and father-in-law, I was able to regain a peaceful daily life. There is no one left to blame me. From now on, I can live a happy life. If I have a son and he brings home a bride, I want to build a relationship where we can all smile.
Naomi, come to the hospital right now. My husband has collapsed. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. It was my mother-in-law's desperate voice telling me to come to the hospital immediately. What? Okay. I'll head there right away. I quickly grabbed my husband and we got in a car. While driving, my husband, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was giggling and exhaling a smile of alcohol. I couldn't help but wonder, why is he laughing in such a serious situation? As I drove, my husband continued to mutter strange things. Yeah, right. So Dad collapsed. He must have taken what I gave him. Good. Everything is going as planned. I felt my blood draining from my face. My heart was pounding in my chest. The only sound in the car was my husband's unsettling laughter. Now, I can become the president of the company. When he said that word, I changed the destination and made a sharp turn. My name is Naomi. It's been 3 years since I married my husband Steve, and we live alone without children. We do want children eventually, but for now, we've decided to focus on work after discussing it together. This is because Steve's father was the president of a printing company, which, although not a large corporation, was a well-known company in our local area. They handle a wide range of work, from corporate flyers to official government documents to web design. You can always see their work around town. Steve, being the only son and heir, quit his previous job and learned the business from his father after we got married. I also wanted to contribute, so I started working with Steve and my in-laws. We agreed not to have children yet, so we could concentrate on work, as there was still so much to learn. Although there were many things I didn't know as a beginner, the job was rewarding and fun every day. My father-in-law was a reserved and very strict person, but he was more serious about work than anyone else and was respected by both customers and employees. In contrast, my mother-in-law was a lovely and talkative person who paid attention to every detail and was always cheerful. I admired and loved my in-laws, especially the way they got along so well with each other. It made me imagine that Steve and I could also have a great future together. At first, I thought everything would go smoothly after we got married. However, Steve's attitude towards me changed a little after we were married. Although he had suggested we share the household chores as we both worked, he began to coming home later and later, until I was the only one doing all the housework. Even if he occasionally came home early, he would just play with his phone and not do anything. He used to thank me when I made dinner before we got married, but now he hardly talks during meals. Lately, he has begun coming home late at night more often. When I asked him if something is wrong, he just goes straight to his room without even looking at me. As these days continue, the once happy married life has become a pile of dissatisfaction towards my husband. When I complain about his attitude, he always responds in the same way. I'm a man who will become the CEO in the future. Know your place. At first, I was just surprised by my husband's terrible language. But as it continued, my disgust grew. Naturally, thoughts of divorce crossed my mind many times. But my in-laws were such nice people, and I didn't want to break off my relationship with them through divorce. The employees at my father-in-law's company were also good people, and the work itself was interesting. I thought it was better to put up with some frustration rather than lose all of this by divorcing Steve. One day, an event happened that pushed me to my limit. Late at night, I received a call from my mother-in-law. She was in panic. She said my father-in-law had collapsed, and my mind went blank. I woke up Steve, who was sleeping, and shook him in a panic. Steve, wake up! What's wrong? It's still dark. I told him what my mother-in-law had said, and he yawned lazily. Your father collapsed. I just got a call from your mom. Huh? Dead? Can it wait until morning? What are you saying? He collapsed. Oh, okay. Just give me a minute. Steve, who still seems dazed, ignored my words and tried to slip under the covers. My husband, who hadn't come home until late as usual today, must have been out drinking. No matter what I said, he didn't seem to hear me and only gave me half-hearted replies. So I reluctantly dragged my husband into the car and headed to the hospital. Until we got into the car, he grumbled and complained, looking unhappy. However, once we started driving, the movement of the car seemed to be soothing, and my husband quickly fell asleep in the passenger seat. Even though his own father was in danger, I couldn't help but sigh at Steve's carefree demeanor. How can you sleep so soundly in this situation? To my surprise, he responded to my muttered words. When I said it was from you, Naomi, Dad was super happy to take it, you know? It was more like a sleep-talking reply than a coherent one. Chuckling in a creepy way, Steve continued speaking. He never drinks with me, no matter how many times I ask. But once I mentioned your name, he immediately agreed and started getting ready. Isn't it strange? What kind of a father he is? Huh. And he drank so much today. But you know what? With this, I can become the president soon. Steve's words made my blood run cold. Could it be that my husband put something in the drink? What if my father-in-law collapsed because of his doing? As I watched Steve laugh uncontrollably, looking so happy and amused, I felt a chill run down my spine. I could feel my fingers gripping the steering wheel, growing cold. Panicking, I quickly parked the car and nervously phoned my mother-in-law. After a few rings, I heard my mother-in-law's voice, sounding weaker than usual. Naomi, glad you called. I'm sorry I panicked earlier. He's alright now. His blood pressure went up a bit, but he's not in any danger. Just to be safe, we're keeping him in the hospital today. Don't worry. Oh, that's good. I was worried. I'm just glad he's okay. I'm sorry for causing you trouble. No, I'm just relieved he's okay now. Hearing my mother-in-law's words, I breathed a sigh of relief. But Steve's words from earlier still bothered me. By the way, there's something I want to ask you. Oh, what is it? What's wrong? Glancing at Steve, who had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, I mustered up the courage to ask her the question on my mind. Did Steve and Dad drink together tonight? I had a feeling that was half praying for it to be wrong, for it to be denied. But what I got from my mother-in-law was affirmative words. Yes, Steve came over to our house with wine, saying that you bought it for him. Sorry for the late thank you, Naomi. My husband was very pleased with it. My faint hope collapsed with her words. Gradually, my mind panicked. What should I do? What can I do? My mother-in-law was concerned as I fell silent for a while. Naomi? What's wrong? Nothing. It's just... I told myself that this was the right thing to do. And then I spoke to my mother-in-law. I'm going to the police now. Huh? What? The police? I felt as though my mother-in-law's puzzled voice came from far away, as she had no idea what was going on. I managed to speak through my trembling, as I relayed what Steve had told me to my mother-in-law. What? Steve would never do such a thing. It must be a misunderstanding. Despite my mother-in-law's laughter, I persisted and headed to the police station with Steve. It turned out to be more difficult than I thought. When Steve woke up, he seemed confused at first and was quiet. But when he realized that he had been brought to the police station, he started yelling and causing a commotion, punching and kicking walls and desks while being restrained by the police officers. Shut up! Don't touch me! I don't have any reason to be here! Let me go! Steve shouted, being drunk and out of control. Despite being restrained by the police, he kept shouting. The police officer tried to calm him down. Your wife said you gave your father something dangerous to drink. Can you please explain? Huh? What are you talking about? I didn't give him anything dangerous. The police officer then turned to me and asked me to repeat what Steve had said earlier. Yes? He said that he could become the president of the company right away because of what he gave to his father. Huh? Naomi, I just gave him a bottle of wine. My dad doesn't usually drink, so I offered him some. I just thought, it would be funny if we got a little tipsy and tripped over or something. I was taken aback by Steve's words. So, it was all just a misunderstanding on my part? The police officer was also looking at me with an incredulous expression. I felt both apologetic and embarrassed, and I shrugged my shoulders and looked down. I had dragged Steve to the police station without any evidence. I would apologize to him properly when we got back home. However, I couldn't believe what Steve said next. I thought he had actually fallen and was seriously injured as I planned, But it turned out to be just high blood pressure. What a disappointment. Damn it. Something inside me broke, and my husband began to express his true feelings about his father. His words grew louder and more forceful. He never accepts my invitation and doesn't drink the alcohol I bring. But he happily drinks the wine when I told him it was from my wife. I mean, really, how sick is that? I'm his son, And he's all gooey over his son's wife. It's so disgusting. Steve started to rampage again, screaming. He was immediately subdued by police officers. but his repeated outbursts caused the situation to become uncontrollable. Eventually, it was resolved as a family dispute, and we went home in the early morning. The car ride home was very quiet, with Steve sleeping soundly next to me. While looking at him out of the corner of my eye, I made a decision. I would finally go through with the divorce that I had been thinking about, but unable to decide on until now. I believed that his behavior at the police station was his true nature all along. Living with Steve was no longer possible. We would never be the kind of couple that I had admired in my in-laws. Certainly, my father-in-law had been very good to me and had treated me with care. But that was because I was Steve's wife. I think he made an effort to make me feel at home as part of family, despite not being related by blood. He also worried that working in his company, which was in an unfamiliar industry for me, would be suffocating. Perhaps he was kind to me precisely because I was a stranger. On the other hand, my father-in-law was especially tough on Steve. My husband was originally an only child and had been raised to become the next president, being pampered by those around him. As a result, Steve was easily conceited and had a tendency to look down on others. Sometimes he would throw a tantrum like a child when things didn't go his way. My father-in-law had reportedly been particularly strict with Steve in order to raise him as the next president. Until Steve became independent, my father-in-law did not show a soft side to him, even rejecting his invitations to socialize outside of work. I had tried to provide support in my own way whenever Steve complained about his father, but it may have had the opposite effect. Steve never noticed my father-in-law's feelings, and instead, it resulted in him harboring resentment. Steve was not only unable to become independent, but also was a person who stayed out late partying and even encouraged his father to drink with the hope that he would get seriously injured. It was just sad that he had become so far removed from the kind of person his father had hoped he would be. I decided to have my father-in-law listen to the recordings I had made of Steve's conversation at the police station. My father-in-law became furious, and Steve ended up not only losing his chance to become the next president, but also losing his job at the company. Steve was essentially disowned by the family. He apologized to his father multiple times, but was not forgiving, and ultimately left the house with tears in his eyes. As for myself, Steve and I divorced, but it became a turning point in my life. I thought that I would no longer have any connection with my in-laws, but unexpectedly, I ended up inheriting the company as per my father-in-law's wish. He had started to seriously consider retirement after his recent health scare. Of course, at first, I hesitated to take on the role of president. However, since Steve was an only child and there was no one else to take over the company, I wanted to repay my in-laws in some small way. Now, although I am inexperienced, I am struggling every day as the president in order to continue the wishes of my in-laws. A few months after the divorce was finalized, my phone suddenly rang. The screen displayed an unexpected name.
Naomi, it's me.
What do you want, Steve? Even though it had been a long time, Steve called my name in a friendly way, which irritated me.
I heard that my dad's company is in your hands now.
It must be tough for you to handle it all alone. Thanks for your concern, but I'm doing just fine.
Well, I know you were putting on a brave face, but
It must be a heavy burden for you. I told you I'm doing just fine. Can I go?
Hey, come on, Naomi. Listen, I've been thinking, why don't we give it another shot?
What are you talking about?
There's no way we can start over again.
You are the kind of person who would hurt people for selfish desire.
But I've changed now. Please, let's try again.
Enough. I gotta go. Don't call me again. I hung up and immediately set my phone to block his calls. But the story didn't end there. Steve appeared at my office the next day. As I was walking from the company towards the parking lot, while chatting with a new employee after work, Steve and some other men approached us. Steve ran towards me while shouting something loudly, just like when he caused a disturbance at the police station before. It's sad that when you are really scared, you can't move or speak. And that's exactly how it was for me. I was frozen with fear and could only watch as Steve approached me. When he got close, I closed my eyes tightly, thinking it was all over. But then, there was a loud noise as something fell.
Are you okay?
I heard a panicked voice. When I cautiously opened my eyes, the new employee was looking at me with concern.
Yeah, I'm okay. Thank you. I'll call the police. Stay here.
He explained the situation to the police on my behalf, as I was still in shock and couldn't do anything. Thanks to him, Steve and the other men were taken away by the police. It turns out that Steve had a grudge against me for rejecting his attempts to get back together and blocked his calls. The idea to ambush me at the company was suggested by his male acquaintances, who he met at a bar where he started hanging out until late at night during our marriage. These men also came up with the plan to get my father-in-law drunk and cause him serious injuries. Perhaps they wanted to enjoy some good times with his expense if Steve became the company president. If the new employee hadn't been there, I shudder to think what would have happened. He still worries about me and has been accompanying me to work. Although I feel a little guilty, I'm more grateful. Maybe I'll treat him to a meal as a thank you. Looking at him, who walks beside me, I picked out a delicious restaurant in my mind.